Nosferatu. This is a pretty important film for director Robert Eggers. As I mentioned, his fourth feature film. He previously directed The Witch, The Lighthouse, and he's coming off of The Northman that he directed a couple of years ago. But Nosferatu holds a special place in his heart. He's talked a lot about this in press interviews that in high school, he did a production of Nosferatu on stage with a close friend of his who went on to be a very celebrated theater director, if I'm not mistaken. But they did a production, a very low-rent production of Nosferatu in high school using just all the resources and things at their disposal. And so this has been somewhat of a passion project for him to ultimately tackle this film, something that's been pretty much hanging over him, I would say, for his entire career. And now, after delivering 3 really, really solid feature films that have been pretty celebrated, in particular, his first 2, I would say, The Lighthouse and The Witch, have been probably his most celebrated feature films. And then to now come into this new time period for him, Nosferatu, and to tackle this material that is really, really important to cinematic Hollywood history. You know, Nosferatu is from 1922. 1922. I don't know why I added an extra 2 there, but 1922.
1919.
It feels that fucking old. That's why. This movie is over 100 years old. You know, it's one of our namesakes when we talk about film. Nosferatu is just one of those foundational movies. It's a silent film, but famously, Nosferatu is based on Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula. In fact, when they made Nosferatu, they could not secure permission from Bram Stoker to make the movie, and so they made the movie anyway. He sued them to try to get the movie destroyed, but they already shot it and made it and put it out, so they couldn't destroy it. And so we still have Nosferatu all these years later, even though Bram Stoker did not approve of it. But if you know anything about vampires and Dracula, like, you'll know that the story is very similar with a few changes and a few tweaks here, but Nosferatu has sort of established its own somewhat separate legacy, even though it's obviously very connected and very rooted in the Dracula story. But anyway, with all of that being said, Robert Eggers finally got a chance to release this movie. It also came out on Christmas Day, and it's been very, very successful, and so we're excited to talk about it today. So with all of that out the way, man, I'll pass it over to you. What did you think about Nosferatu?
So Nosferatu was easily one of my, I think, most anticipated movies of the year. My friends, people know I've just been talking about it for a long time. I really enjoy Robert Eggers as a filmmaker. He is a filmmaker that's so interesting to me because his background is a lot in production design, in directing theater in his younger days. And so I love to see that translated in his work. And what's also good about Robert Eggers is he's relatively young. So every time a new project comes out, I get excited all over again because I'm like, dude, we're going to be watching your movies for a long time, you know what I mean? God willing. And so I think Nosferatu, after seeing it, is of no exception, I think, to the fun in interesting filmmaking that he has accomplished over the years. And you said it, Nosferatu is a very important film to him. And you do have to question, you're like, dude, it's only your 4th movie you're doing Nosferatu. That is kind of crazy. Like you said, a very beloved film, 1922. So many characters came from Nosferatu, all of these vampire movies, but you can even trace back to the Joker we know today from the character Nosferatu. It's just really crazy to think about how much influence that movie has had on cinema. And here we are, and here he is doing his version of this in his 4th movie. Like it kind of blows my mind a little bit, but I think he has so much care for what he does, so much research for what he does. And Nosferatu comes in. It tells a similar tale, like you said. It's pretty much what we know. If you've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, if you've seen Nosferatu, if you've seen a lot of those vampire films, you pretty much know the story of what's going on here. But he made it Robert Eggers. And that means so many different things. It's a little more creepy. It's shot beautifully. Not only that, Robert Eggers also has a really good job of pulling out these performances out of out of actors that blows your mind. In this movie, I think Lily-Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, and Bill Skarsgård were going insane. Particularly Lily-Rose Depp is doing some things here that I was like, wow. You have impressed me more than I thought you would, and seeing where they get a lot of the inspiration for a lot of the things they were doing, I really enjoyed. Because what's really cool about this film, of course, it has all those Dracula things in it, but they take a slightly different approach and kind of throw in a possession element to it that I really enjoy and I really like about it. And leaving theater, I just could not stop thinking about this film and the way it's lit. There's a lot of moonlit scenes in this movie that I really like. There's a lot of I remember watching a video of how they had to make the snow, because the thing that people used to use to make the snow, he didn't want to make it CG. The thing that they used to want to make it snow doesn't exist anymore, so they had to come up with a new thing with potato flakes, and it looks really good when you watch it on screen. It's like, how did y'all get that to look like that? It kind of blows my mind. But to me, just everything, knowing the story and have watched those movies day in and day out and be able to have this kind of spin on it, to me was impressive. He actually added something new for me, a little different ambiance that I didn't think I would get out of the film. I really enjoyed this film. As you see, it made my top 10. I think it was my number 6 spot of the year. Nosferatu, man. I think Robert Eggers is just really one of those filmmakers. He really is. I call him the new weird. I call him the weird three. It's Robert Eggers, Yorgos Lanthimos, and Ari Aster. Man, they always do something that's so interesting on the screen to me. And this movie to me is no exception, man. I absolutely love Nosferatu. I think it's a very well crafted film with a lot of interesting takes. And Bill Skarsgård was having so much fun. Yeah, I can't wait to see Robert Eggers make more movies, man.
So Robert Eggers, man, he's really cemented himself as a distinct style filmmaker. He certainly has made his own pathway, and he's done it in, I think, the most faithful way that he knows how to his own sensibilities, with those elements that you mentioned, like production design and lighting and sound, and just those technical elements that he's been able to take to different levels that we just don't often see as much, I think, in a lot of these other movies. And just his commitment to realism and craft is just so admirable, and something that he is just really becoming almost singular compared to a lot of his peers in that respect. And got a chance to see this on IMAX as well, and instantly transported to this time period. I mean, it's uncanny how he's able to do this time and time again. You really feel like you're living in the era and you're existing in this particular time period. I mean, this is 19th century Germany that this is taking place, and I felt like I was there. And the movie just really grips you and it grabs you and it doesn't let you go. And it's almost hypnotic in that way. And that's what I remember the most about watching it, just the hypnotic nature of just like, I really feel like I'm in this. I feel like I'm in this castle. I feel like I'm in Transylvania, in these hallways, in this darkly lit room, and you feel like you're right next to some of the characters when they're speaking. I mean, all of those technical elements, he just knows how to do it on a level and a scale that you just don't see replicated that often. And he does it time and time again. I think that all of his movies in different ways are beautiful, and he shoots them differently, and he tackles different types of material and also different eras. And so he's consistently challenging himself. Like, he refuses to do anything modern day. He has no interest in that stuff. And it's like, I totally get it, because the way that you're able to bring to life these things that were real and existed, and to give them a modern twist, whether it's a familiar story or not, is just super impressive. And that's one thing that I'll just always admire about him. And, you know, the idea that this is something that's been like in his heart to make for such a long time is also a really compelling and a good story. Like, obviously you would want to tell that story on the press run and talk about that. Like, Nosferatu has been a part of my life pretty much since he can remember, that he was interested in the film. And of course he's leaned into mostly horror films in the early days of his career. And Nosferatu in this one, you know, you could just tell that he was very interested in making an extremely, extremely faithful adaptation of the original 1922 silent film. There I go again, adding on another 2. But he was interested in making a very faithful adaptation. And, you know, look, I think for me, it made me question why make this film then. Because beat for beat, it is the same story. Like, it is the exact same story. In fact, there's another Nosferatu movie that came out in the 70s from Werner Herzog, who added his own twist, but it's also the same story. It added in a couple of new things that are interesting, and it added in a different moody atmosphere that you just couldn't achieve in the 20s. And so I think that movie stands on its own as like the modern interpretation of it. But now, you know, fast forward another 40 years and Robert Eggers is adding on his take. And technically, yes, he can do things that just could not be achieved 40 years ago, and certainly not 100 years ago. But it is incredibly faithful, and it is the exact same story for the most part. And that just made me wonder, well, why make this movie? Because you have clearly shown like you are beholden to the story and you have no interest in changing anything about it. And that was just one of the things where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. A part of me kind of wishes maybe something differently was done. Maybe something radically different could have been done with the ending or a certain character or a certain arc that happens. But again, if you've seen the Nosferatu movies, if you've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula or read the novels, like this is that story. And it just makes me wonder, like, well, did we really need this? Like, yes, it's 2024, 2025, but a lot of that stuff still really holds up if you ask me personally. That's my big thing about it. And I think that, and I watched it twice. I took my dad to see it the second time. Talk about a Christmas Day experience. Hey, Dad, let's go see Nosferatu.
This crazy movie.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. By the way, he hadn't been to the movies in the last movie he saw in movie theaters.
Yeah,
I'll give you, it came out in the 90s, mid-90s. I'll give you a guess. The last movie he saw in movie theaters, mid-90s, action movie.
Boys in the Hood. Oh, action movie.
Action movie. Heist movie. Heist movie in the 90s.
It can't be no, that don't make sense. It can't be Heat.
It is Heat. That's exactly it.
No way.
The last movie you saw in the fucking movie theaters was Heat, 1995.
Can't be Heat.
It's Heat, man. But anyway, that's a tangent. Last movie you saw in theaters, so treated him to a movie. But anyway, I bring that up to say I saw the movie twice, and I will say that the second time I saw it, I liked it a little bit less because I just don't know how many more times I'm going to watch this. Just considering like it's the same material, and I just don't know. I don't know if I have any interest in revisiting this. Whereas movies like The Witch and The Lighthouse, I revisit those all the time. Like The Witch is like the new modern day classic for horror movies. The Lighthouse, I find fucking hilarious. That's a comedy to me. So I just watch that for fun. And so I just don't know how many more times I'm going to revisit Nosferatu. You know, I just think it's one of those things where it's like, I get it. This is like a personal passion project. You had to get it off. It was resting on your soul and your mind. I get all of that. But I do just question, like, did we really need it? Just considering, like, this is the exact same story. That being said, all the stuff you said is true about the performances. Lily-Rose Depp, she goes to another gear. I was even impressed. Nicholas Hoult, he's on just an incredible run right now.
He's a great run.
He's in this. He's in another. Yeah, Juror number 2. He's incredible in. He's in another movie I want to see called The Order. He's about to be Lex Luthor. He's just doing. He's doing everything right now. So yeah, you get really, really great performances. Even Lily-Rose Depp, like the contortions and the possession stuff that they do, like no CGI apparently. All her just contorting and doing ungodly things to her body. I hope that she has the best fucking chiropractor that money can buy, because your spine should not been like that. But she totally went for it. But overall, I still really, really did enjoy this movie, and I felt transported by it. And I just love, again, the trajectory that Robert Eggers is on. He's just so talented. So I can't wait to see, I guess, what area he tackles next. I think he already has his next movie written and ready to go. I don't remember what era it is, but he certainly has no interest in being in modern day stuff. So I can't wait to see what comes from it. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on Nosferatu. If you got a chance to check this out over the holiday, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.